at the Charter Commission. Thank you. We really appreciate you being here.
Well, since you named me first, I'll go first.
Sure, Melanie, you're on.
I'm Melanie, and I'm a neighbor. I'm with Southwest Hills Residential League. I consider myself the official old person of the Charter Commission, which I hold with great pride, because I can speak old and I can translate. When all the young people say things, I can translate it into old. So you may draw on me as much as you wish. I very quickly, because I know that this is a packed meeting, I want to tell you that it has been a tremendous pleasure for me to work on this Charter Commission. It's huge work. We're working very hard, but the joy of it is not only doing good for this city, and that of course is a tremendous joy, but also having the opportunity to work with such a brilliant team. So with that said, I'm going to pass it to Amira.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Amira Streeter, she, her pronouns, and just want to say thank you to Stanley for inviting us today. It has been a very long time, and it's very nice to see you again. I am the current co-chair of the commission, along with Commissioner Rahi Reddy, and very excited to talk a little bit more with you about the work we've done so far with our respective committees on form of government and elections. And I will pass it on to Vadim.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see familiar faces. Like everyone said, the Charter Commission is hard at work. We just have amazing people, so I expect good results. Looking forward to talking about more in-depth information with y'all in a little bit. I kind of wear a lot of hats, but I'm also on the Neighborhood Association board for the Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association next door, the secretary of that association. So I'm not sure if Bill is here, but the secretary of your association, hard work. Hats, oh yeah, there you go, Bill. Hats off to you for all the hard work that you're doing. It's a thankless job, but it's well worth it. Thank you.
So Stan, do you want me to start on our presentation? Okay.
Please do.
All right, I'm going to put up my screen. We're all going to take turns talking. When the screen is up, it's hard for us, it's impossible for me, I don't know about the others, to actually see you. So you have two options. If you could hold your questions to the end. If you put them on the chat, I won't see it. The other option is simply to interrupt, and I'm perfectly fine with that because of the fact that I can't see you. And the last thing I want to say before I begin is sincere apologies to Judy Duncan and Stan Pankin, who have seen this so many times before they could actually give this presentation, but we're not going to let them. So here we go.
Can't do it as well as all of you.
And I'm always learning. It's always great to hear you speak.
Well, here we go. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Amira, who prettied up my presentation. Thank you, Amira. It also gave me a million headaches trying to get every font the right color, but here we go. So I'm going to tell you about Portland Charter Review and a little bit in advance, and then I'm going to turn it over to Amira. So for those of you who don't know, the Charter Commission is made up of 20 citizens from Portland. We were appointed by the current city council and mayor. Each of those had the ability to appoint 4 people, but in the case of many, certainly myself, we did not know who appointed us, and all of the city council had to agree on all of the appointments. We've had previous charter commissions. This one is different in the level of authority. Because of problems in the past, this time, for the first time ever, if 15 of the 20 of us agree on a measure that should go forward to the electorate, it goes forward to the electorate as written. It will not go through approval of the city council or the mayor. It will go straight to the voters. If between 11 and 14 of us agree, it will go to the city council for consideration. Rewriting a city charter is an enormous undertaking, and this year in particular it is, because I think all Portlanders are coming to understand that we need some change in our city. I will tell you that the charter has failed. A charter review attempts have failed 7 times in the past, and in the last 2 times by more than 3 to 1. But there's a big difference this year. In 2007, when it last failed, everyone was saying, our city is fine exactly as it is. We are, we're one of the best cities in America. Everything is good. We've had more than 500 pieces of testimony to date. Not a single one has sent us that message. So we're looking at a considerable amount of change. And because there are only 20 of us and we all have other lives, we've divided it into 2 phases. Right now, we're working on phase 1. Phase 1, we're looking at the form of government and how the city council elections will take place. That phase, we're hoping to have drafts of the measures we want to put forward by January. And then we will be talking to the public about what we have put forward until that time, until it goes on to the ballot in November. Phase 2 will actually begin in January. So although I've listed some things here, such as service alignment and bureau coordination, accountability and transparency, phase 2 has not been fully determined yet what we will work on. Although for those of you, and I'm talking now to Sally Mize, that are very concerned about trash, I promise you it will be part of phase 2. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amira, who is going to be talking about the phase 1 issue on form of government.
All right, thank you, Melanie. So we've divided the commission into several committees to look at various issues. One is form of government that I'm a part of. And as you can see on the slide, we have 6 different desired outcomes to build off of that committee structure. These kind of serve as our North Stars, so to speak, as we figure out where we're going to land in doing our research. These are the principles that are going to guide us. And so we're kind of, I like to think of it as drawing up like a path to go from point A to point B. And this would be like the point B. So first, we have participatory and growing democracy. 2, accessible and transparent government. 3, a reflective government of the communities that are being served. 4th, a responsive government. 5, an accountable government. And 6, a trustworthy government. I think these kind of highlight the desires that many Portlanders feel based off of our city council structure right now. And so this is what we're working towards. Next slide. Oh, thank you. So with our desired outcomes in mind, here's a list of the initial research questions that we are analyzing in our committees and work groups. The main things we want to figure out are things around like legislative authority, who has the power to make the laws or who should have that power, executive authority, who should have the power to carry out those laws, questioning whether the mayor is a member of council or not, whether the mayor votes with council, whether the mayor should have veto authority if the mayor doesn't vote with council, and then questions around the appointment of heads of bureaus and a chief administrator officer or city manager. We're really looking towards in those questions around this sentiment that, councilors maybe shouldn't manage bureaus directly. And so who will be the keepers of the bureaus and help manage them and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? And then how does the appointment and removal process work around that? The same with policy development. This is very close to legislative authority, but also who should be responsible for developing policy. Is it the mayor and council? Is it just council? Is it some other group that we're thinking of, like city manager, that would be responsible for that. And then preparing the budget. Right now, our budget system is not very transparent and oftentimes doesn't seem to be accountable or responsive to the needs that we see on the ground. And so, how can we better assess who should be responsible for preparing the budget? Is it going to be a collaborative, coordinated process, or is it as it is now with the mayor putting together the budget and working it with council? So we've already started to meet regularly, and so I just wanted to highlight a couple areas of agreement that the committee has come to, and I think we just got to these in our last meeting, if anyone was paying attention to that. So 3 areas that we are have general agreement about. One is increasing the size of city council. We would like to see generally more seats available. And then this kind of starts to get into questions around districts and whether those should be a thing and how many seats there should be and how many representatives should be in each of those districts. Removing the role of commissioner in charge of bureaus. I just mentioned this. This area of agreement would shift the management authority somewhere else. And then clearly defining the roles and responsibilities of the mayor and city council. Right now, it seems that people want to point to the mayor as being the primary authority figure, and if not the mayor, different council members, depending on the bureau. And sometimes that role and responsibility isn't exactly clear. And so we want to make sure that we're redefining like who's responsible for what in managing and running the city.
Thank you, Amira. Vadim and I are now going to talk about city council elections, which we're dividing into 2 sections because our committees have divided into 2. One is what the councilors would look like, and the other is how the voting would take place. I'm going to start with the city council election system. Amira has already referred to that in terms of we want more city councilors and the question of whether they should be district-based or not. As you know, I'm sure now we have 4 city councilors, not including the mayor, who are all elected at large. There are obvious problems with this system. One is there's just not enough. This was developed when we had 200,000 people. In Portland, we now have 650,000 people. Having everything be voted on at large means that wealthy or powerfully backed candidates have a distinct advantage because you have to have the wherewithal to be able to run throughout the entire city. It also leads to a lack of diversity on the council. In the past, up until this latest election, most everyone came from the west side of the city, and we're not getting enough diversity on that eastern side, which has the largest population in our city. Also, especially if you read the comments that we've been getting from the public on this process, one huge concern is a lack of knowledge, a local knowledge, a lack of feeling that there's someone who is directly representing you, and a lack of being able to have access to that candidate. For example, we may not think citywide that traffic racing up in North Portland or Southeast Portland is a huge problem. We don't face that, but people there see it as a tremendous problem. We've had a lot of comments on that, and they'd like to see someone who represents them and knows about the issues that they're facing. Vadim is going to cover the second 2 points, which are that the primary and general election system promote divisiveness, as we've seen throughout our country. When you have a primary system, it often will push to the 2 sides, to the 2 extremes, and that we get very low voter turnout in off-year and primary elections. So what are our desired outcomes? We want more voices to be heard. We want counselors who are easy to reach, who look like the community they represent, who understand the needs of that community, and who answer to the people. And it's also very important that we have counselors who will safeguard our democratic process. So our initial research questions are: what size should the city council be? The first group said we want a larger city council. We're now looking at how large should that be? How should those councilors be elected? By district, at large, or hybrid? How many districts should there be, and how should they be drawn? We will not be drawing the districts. That is beyond our ambit, but we can certainly give guidance on how many districts they should be and what the logic behind that is. Whether we want those districts to be single representative or multi-member, and then the form of voting and the timing of elections. Just to go back to that very briefly, I should say that none of this has been decided yet, but I would say that there is a certain movement, it seems to be, in favor of district elections. Now, I'm going to show you in a couple of slides. This is not what has been determined yet by the City Council. These are slides that I put forth in a presentation I gave recently, but I want to show you one of the difficulties that we're facing in choosing districts and whether you would want to go for single member or multi-member districts. So in this picture, I know you can't see everything, but if on your slide, you look at the top of your screen, you can enlarge it. This shows what the racial makeup is of various sections of Portland. And as you all know, Portland is a predominantly white city, but one thing that you see that is making just having districts with a single member representing those districts that we're facing right away is that if you look at the districts, you get white domination virtually everywhere. It's not like some of the older cities in the United States where you might have a Black neighborhood, an Italian neighborhood, a Jewish neighborhood. Generally in Portland, people are kind of all over the place. So you can't simply choose districts and think that you would get really fair racial representation throughout Portland. So that's problem number one. And problem number two, and this is looking at economics, same thing that we're seeing. The wealthier areas are green and blue. And so you see Southwest has a dominance of green and blue, but kind of everyone has, with the exception of your lovely neighborhood, this dominance of green and blue. So when we're looking at the options that we might proceed to get the most democratic form of government and people all feeling that someone who understands them represents them, we're looking at the idea of multi-member districts. And a multi-member district would mean, let's say we divided Portland into 4 or 5 groups like they currently are in terms of our quadrants, Portland being the only city in America with 5, now 6 quadrants. Never mind, that's us. By having multi-member, you would give a chance to those people who are not part of the dominant race, the dominant economic background. So that's just couple of the issues that we're looking at. No decisions have been made as yet. Now I'm going to turn it over to Vadim to talk about voting methods.
Thank you. I'll try to rush through this. I know y'all have a big vote ahead of you. So there's 3 areas that is being looked at in the work group that is focusing on form of voting. One is the winner take all, which we currently have right now. It is also called plurality voting, where the winner, whoever gets 50+1% wins the election with a primary. Then there's Rankchase and star. So Rankchase voting, voters rank candidates by preference on their ballots. If a candidate wins the majority of first preference votes, he or she is declared the winner. If no candidate wins a majority, the candidate with the fewest first preferences is eliminated. First preference votes cast for the eliminated candidate goes to the second preference on the ballot. And a new tally is conducted to determine whether any candidate has won a majority. So basically you're eliminating the last place person and taking their votes, the second place votes, and giving it to the next candidate and seeing if anybody wins outright at that point in time. And you keep on doing that until someone has 50% plus 1 vote. And so the pros are candidates with the broadest support typically would win. Negative campaigning is discouraged since candidates kind of have to work together in order to get those second place votes that are very important. empowers independent and third-party candidates by eliminating wasted votes. And wasted votes are when people don't want to vote for a particular candidate because they feel that it won't be counted, such as voting for a Republican in a Democratic state or vice versa. And better it better represents the diversity of constituencies. The downside is it's more complicated to understand. People have to review a lot more candidates in order to rank those second, third, fourth, fifth choices. And some voters actually prefer head-to-head primaries because it allows them to focus on the issues of the two main vote gatherers rather than, 5 or how many of our people are running. Then there's the star. This is something that's gaining traction amongst several of the people on the Charter Commission. Voters rate the candidates for a given office on a scale of 0 to 5. The top 2 finishers advance to an automatic runoff. Voters' full vote is assigned to whichever of the 2 finishers he or she scored the highest. And the candidate whom a greater number of voters gave a high score in the runoff is declared the winner. So basically you rank people 0 to 5, the top 2 candidates move on, and everybody else that didn't move on, whoever is rated the highest on those subsequent votes, those are added to the top 2 candidates for an automatic primary in a way. The pros is it allows voters to express nuanced support for candidates. Proponents claim that the candidate with most consensus support tends to win, and it allows the opportunity for third-party candidates to be competitive. The downside is this has been developed in 2014 and not tested in any political election. So Rankchase voting is now occurring in about 13 or 14 cities. So far, star voting has not occurred in any political election. They've occurred in some minor party type things, but not an actual election. It does not satisfy the strict majority criterion, which means the candidate that the most voters would prefer may not have made it past the top 2 primary. So because those second and third choice voting actually helps a lot, or second, third choice priorities might help a lot. What that does is it might actually mean that the person who received the most votes, most number 1 votes, does not actually win the eventual primary, the automatic primary. And star voting doesn't always pass the later no harm criterion, meaning that if in a star election, a voter may hurt the chances of the voter's favorite by showing support for others. And there's ways to game the system accordingly. So an individual might someone might say, like, rank me 5, but then everyone else 0 in order to kind of game the system. So that's my presentation. Those are the various election formats that are being discussed. Ranked choice voting and star voting both are getting quite a bit of traction.
So if you are feeling overwhelmed by this presentation and more confused than anything else, I don't blame you. We've moved through it really quickly. And these are things that those of us on the Charter Commission have been working on for months. Our research period will continue through this month into December before we come up with any final motions that we want to start writing and putting forward. But one thing I want to emphasize to all of you is that your voice really counts. We are listening to you. We listen to your testimony. We read what you have written in. And you also have an opportunity to go back and listen to all of our meetings if that's what you want, to see how we're getting to the decisions that we are. I really want to recommend that our charter review website is excellent. And you can sign up to give testimony. We have the address here to sign up, and I will give a copy of all of this to Stan so he can share it with you. You can also provide written comments, and we have a link there for you. Also coming up, sadly to say, we have 2 of these in November, but they've both sold out, our community listening sessions, but we're going to have more in January. So you can sign up for a community listening session. And what that means is we just want to hear what you think are the problems that our city is facing right now and what you would like to see done about it. And if all you want to do is get updates on what we're doing, we have a link for that as well. So on the basis of understanding your lack of time, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop sharing, but we are open to your questions given how much time this has been set aside for the agenda, and we will respect that. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
I have a quick.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Sally.
Thanks. The screens that you just showed are on the website.
No,
Oh.
I just completed them 10 minutes before this meeting.
Will they be at any point?
I'm going to send them to Stan.
Oh, that's what, okay. I misunderstood what you were sending them. Thank you.
Okay, do we have other questions, comments? No, no questions. See, you guys did such a great presentation. There are no questions.
We obviously confused everybody and there's no question. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
I just want to say thank you for a great
one question.
presentation. Really good work.
Really appreciate it.
I think there's a
Judy,
question, actually.
is there? I don't see one.
Barry.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Barry, please.
Hi,
go
thank you.
ahead.
I live in the Encore and my wife and I have been residents part of the year here since 2010. So we watched what's been happening and we moved here because our daughter moved in this area in 1995. I've lived in many places across the country. We currently have homes in both Connecticut and Florida. And I just have one question because I come from a science and corporate type background. We're reinventing the wheel in some respects because what you've been doing is a very good analysis. This is the type analysis a good consulting firm would do. This is just my opinion. I'm not criticizing. I'm saying it's a very good analysis because you seem to be covering all the bases. However, there must be many cities around our size that have been working very well for a lot of years. Why don't we just look at 24 cities, 30 cities that seem to be surviving pretty well and see what they do and just pick the best? Because some of the things you've proposed, as Vadim pointed out, like the STAR system, quite complicated. I figured it was easy to game the moment you describe what it was. And simple is better. That's just an opinion. And it's been that way wherever I've worked.
I'm going to start the answer and then I'm going to turn it to Amira because she turned her microphone on. So I think she wants it. Barry,
Yes,
you've given us very good advice, which we took before you gave it to us.
I'm sure.
We've been spending a lot of time looking at other cities and what they do. Obviously, no city is perfect. No city is Portland. So we've been spending a lot of time talking to city managers, city mayors, and different people to find out what works and what doesn't work within their cities. But we are also of a mind that we do not have to absolutely imitate. We can look at new systems that may be of interest. And so, Amira, did you want to add something?
Yeah, that was a really good jump off point. So we are looking at other cities. There's actually a lot of research being done right now to look at different systems. And I probably should have mentioned this too, is that there seems to be two different forms of government that we are analyzing. Portland has a third kind. One kind is an executive mayor, legislative council form of government, and then the other one is city manager. And so we're kind of looking at different cities and municipalities and how they're functioning with both of those systems and kind of trying to figure out what works best for Portland. There are a number of cities that are actually dealing with the same question. It seems that cities seem to be functioning okay until they're not. And so there's different proposals out there. I can't remember which city it was, but I think somewhere in the South where they tried to reform their charter to a different form of government, and that actually failed. And so I think we're doing a combination of things of figuring out what the problems are, where we want to be, and then seeing what other cities are doing to mitigate those issues. I think if we just cut and paste what's happening in like Boston, for example, it might not work for our community, even though the populations are similar.
And I just want to add that, to Amira's point exactly, we have to understand the appetite of Portland voters, which is very important. One of the biggest things that happened back in 2007 is that people just dramatically opposed the whole idea of a strong mayor. We need to bear that in mind. Doesn't mean that we don't look at an executive mayor, but we need to bear in mind what upset Portland voters in the past and find ways of doing it in a way that will not be upsetting to Portland voters. Vadim, did you want to add anything?
Quite a bit, but I'm okay. To save time. You all said it well. Thank you.
So Sean,
Thank you. It sounds like we'll be going in the direction of council districts. More likely than not. That introduces, as we've seen nationally and even just within Oregon over the past few weeks, that introduces the terrible prospect of redistricting, which isn't the worst. It doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world, but is the council or is the Charter Commission looking at ways to remove politics from redistricting by requiring algorithmic processes rather than political ones or something like that?
okay, Sean, lesson number one, you're never going to remove politics from redistricting. Ain't going to happen, but we hope as highly as you hope on that one. But
I mean,
yes,
but
we're looking at
politics,
different things. I mean,
the politics can be removed if we use algorithms instead, because then no one has a choice. The algorithm defines how it works.
people, okay, we're just going to say you have the solution and that's fine. But I will also say we're looking at many things. And one is Portlanders' comfort with the neighborhoods that they already have and their willingness. Certainly, we know that no one's going to be happy with something that looks seriously gerrymandered. But we will not ultimately be the people who choose those districts, but we will be looking at the number of districts, not precisely how they will be formed.
And just to add on to that, appreciate what Michelle put in the chat about algorithms. We actually did have a commission meeting where I can't remember the presenter right now, but they described a way to build out an algorithm that would create districts to enhance the most equity and diversity by district based off of population of people of color. And so I think there is like a way to maybe develop a few different scenarios and algorithms that could help with that, but I don't think it's as simple as deciding to go with that system. For example, like how would you divide up the districts when we have different neighborhoods right now? Where I live, South Portland just got designated, so is that automatically a district on its own? And then I agree with Melanie's perspective on that it's very hard to get the politics out of redistricting. As we can see from the state and metro processes right now with the census data. But I appreciate your perspective, Sean.
Okay, with that, I'm going to say thank you to our commissioners. We really appreciate it. Judy, you and I are going to get better and better at this. We keep going to these. So thank you again. And